Hi. So as I'm sure you'll notice right away, the length of this video is crazy. Like 4 hours in total or something. I'm not sure how long it's going to be after I edit it, but basically that's what I'm here to tell you right now. It's not edited. The sound quality may at times clip. I may cough loudly. I may do something. I'm just going to apologize ahead of time because I cannot spend 5 hours or more cleaning up the audio to something that nobody's going to watch. So I'm sorry if you found this video and you're looking forward to a great patch analysis. Personally, I think I actually did a pretty good job as far as knowledge and analysis go. The only real problem was that I took way too long to get my point across, and sometimes I talked way too much about nothing. Like if a cooldown on Flutter went down by 5 seconds, something like that, maybe I talked too much about it. But other than that, the general information that I give seems to be fairly accurate and in line with what I have since watched the pros give in their patch analysis videos. So I feel pretty good about this, honestly. And more than anything, this was just a practice run to see how I would do in a patch analysis, because this is the first one I've ever done. So without further ado, just hop right into the video right now and enjoy the cast. Hi. So 6.87 has finally been released, and this is going to be my first patch review video ever, so I don't really know how I'm going to pull this off. It's probably going to be like 3 hours, so with that said, let's just dive right in. I did read the first block of text, all the general stuff, all the terrain changes, all the stuff that affects everything, just so that I could get a better idea of what's going to be going on throughout the rest of the patch, and maybe do some numbers calculations ahead of time, just to see what kind of percentages get changed. You'll see what I mean. So actually I'll zoom up. So first things first, we have the reworked ranked all pick, and basically they're just making it all ban. This idea has been suggested for years at this point, and they're finally adding it in. So what they're going to be doing is that they are going to be, let's see, you have 15 seconds to vote. Not everyone, you don't have to vote if you don't want to. And then you cannot vote for the same hero. So, and then afterwards, half the heroes that are voted on will be randomly banned. So basically you're going to have 10 people banning I'm not sure who the meta flavor heroes of this patch will be, because I haven't read through any of the hero changes yet. This is all going to be fresh for me as I read through it for this video. But you're probably just going to have the same 15 heroes being banned at high level games over and over again, and then RNG will just decide who's in and who's out. I don't really think that's a bad thing though. It's not going to be game deciding. It's just going to be random draft, and that was a fine mode when it was in, that I still play a lot. I really enjoy it, so I'm really going to enjoy this. Now this is a change that I've had some time to think about since I read these about a few hours ago, and I don't want to derail the hype train, but for a lot of these things that are being implemented that are game changers, they're not as big as you think. Especially this in particular, the scan thing at lower levels. What's going to happen is just some guy's going to use it selfishly, whenever it's off cooldown, and it's not going to do anything. The difference between this and glyph is that you can't just glyph for yourself, but you can use this for yourself. So at low levels, people are just going to use this when it's off cooldown, and it's not going to accomplish anything. But I mean, who cares about low level games, right? High level games. So it scans a targeted area of 900 AoE for 8 seconds. So for reference, a 900 AoE is about Freezing Field or Requiem, those kind of spells. That's about 900. So the main thing that I wanted to express here is that just the fact that it scans that area for 900 AoE is actually not that much information. The important part here is that it scans over a duration of time, 8 seconds, so that you can see when somebody is moving in and out of an area. So let's say you're sieging a tier 2. Let's say you're sieging Dire bottom lane tier 2. So when you're going into that, you're coming up from the south, and then typically they'll be trying to wrap around you from the river, or just come from the side. So you have the ability to place a 900 AoE scan in that area to see if any heroes are coming at you and when they move in and out of that area. And I'm assuming you can target this with, it gives you a 900 AoE circle to give you precise dimensions that you want. So you'll be able to pretty reliably know when people are wrapping around on you. But for certain things, because it has such a long cooldown, it's 4.5 minutes, it's going to be used very sparingly at a high level. But considering it does consider smoked units, it's really hard to evaluate without playing a lot of games with it. But I imagine it's not going to be as big as people think. Because a lot of the time, you're going to assume that they're smoked anyway. If you have aggressive wards in their jungle, and you're hiding by your tier 3s and stuff, and just going out to farm in a somewhat precarious situation, you're going to assume when they're all off the map that they're smoking anyway. So scanning in an area, it's you're already playing around the fact that you think they're there. So confirming whether or not they're there is it's not as big of a deal as you think, because you're already going to play around the fact that they're there. So I don't know, it's just really weird to think about, because nothing has ever been made like this before. It's so foreign to what Dota has always been. So I'm really interested to see how it affects games as a whole. Moving on, we have some base stat changes. So, 20 HP to every hero. These things are important, but it's not particularly interesting to talk about. So hero base mana increase from 0 to 50. That is interesting to talk about, because for a lot of heroes, this increases their mana pool by 20%, 25%, some even 33%. It's actually a huge increase on a lot of heroes. And it greatly affects the viability of purchasing clarities and mangoes. And because if you don't have to purchase a clarity or mango, then you can purchase other items like health regen or tankability, like a toe shield or something. So it follows this huge chain of command where it's a little more mana means you can buy different items, which means you can survive different things, which you can itemize towards different situations. It opens up a whole range of possibility that isn't just gains 50 mana. It follows this giant tree of branching outcomes just because you get 50 extra mana at the beginning of the game. It's really interesting. You're going to hear me say that a lot, by the way, so I'll try to dial it down, but it'll peek through every now and then. Now, intelligence increases your spell damage by 1% per 16 intelligence points. This is not a big deal. So I have some numbers here. So Alina, level 25, with all of her points and stats and everything, had 107 intelligence, which is a 6% increase. Now let's say she has all that, plus a Yules, a Scythe, and an Ags. And then maybe she has BKB or something else that doesn't increase her intelligence. So she has 162 intelligence, which is a 10% increase. It's not that big. It doesn't make that big of a difference. If anything, I just wonder why they implemented this at all. It's it's definitely there. A 10% increase is still a 10% increase, and that's cool. But it's not that impactful, really, until you get a lot of intelligence. 100 intelligence is a lot to get. So yeah, I'm not too wowed by this. If anything, this just throws off a lot of the math that you would otherwise do. When you click a hero and you're wondering can I finger this hero down, and it's just the math is going to be all skewed, and you're going to be you're just going to have to get way better at math basically on the fly, which sucks for people like me. And this point here, it just means that for each 1 point of intelligence you have 1 less mana. So that's what this note means right here. So you lose 1 mana for each point of intelligence. That's the easiest way to think about this change. And you gain 1 for each here as well. So the biggest implication of this lane creep health upgrade is that certain combos won't clear a lane quite as quickly, or they won't like one-shot the lane. Like if you Dragon Slave and Light Strike Array, it won't clear the lane for as long into the game anymore. When you get Aether Lens and everything, then you'll notice when you get Aether Lens sometimes that your combo goes from not clearing the lane anymore to clearing the lane, and that's actually a big deal. And now that you have this spell damage increase, it's basically just going to offset this health change in that regard. So honestly, this doesn't change too much in terms of that scaling. In terms of right click, I mean, it also doesn't change that much because this is only once every 7.5 minutes. So your right click is obviously going to increase just as much. So this thing is more just to keep in line with the spell damage increase than anything. The only thing this actually really affects is how many tower hits it takes, which we'll get to right here. Another different change. So this increase is about, so tier 2 towers deal 120 to 140 damage, so an average of 130. Tier 3s go from 122 to 182, so an average of 152. So this actually increases by 30 damage, but it also increases the variance by 60 damage. And it's going to be really hard to last hit under a tier 2 tower now, which is actually a big deal. So towers now grant an armor aura to allied heroes. For the tier 1 tower, this doesn't do a whole lot, unless you're like a low, I believe this is, let me think. So normally armor auras are 900 AoEs. I'm going to guess this is probably 900 AoE. It could be a 700 because they're reducing the true sight range as well. But regardless, this is mostly going to affect low armor mid laners when they get dived and stuff. Beyond that, the tier 2, 3, and 4 towers are where this actually gets really impactful because defending your towers granting 3 armor. Now that's a big increase. That's a 18% increase in survivability against physical damage. That is a significant number. Defending your towers in a huddled mass is going to be a little easier, and your positioning playing around this aura is going to be much more important. And personally, I don't like this change. I don't like this change one bit, and that's coming from a hero, and that's coming from a person who plays a lot of invis heroes, like Bounty. Well, pretty much only Bounty. But anyway, so the reason they made this change, I'm like 90% sure on this, is because they added the circle targeting for when you're getting aggroed by the tower, and it has that little red circle around the tower. But what most people didn't know was that the true sight range went beyond that red circle. So now they're reducing it to keep in parity with this circle so that it's easier for new players to walk through these lines and not get spotted. I'm pretty sure that's why they did this. Personally, I like knowing that the true sight went a little bit beyond that so that you could, I don't know, it just felt like, it felt good knowing that skill, you know? And now that's gone, which is kind of sad. But I can see that not every skill cap argument, not every skill cap thing has to say in the game, you know? It's like, it's a little sad, but I mean, I can understand why they made this change. It makes the UI simpler. It makes people understand why something's happening, and that makes things better as a whole. So the initial bounty ruin no longer giving experience. I don't think this is going to reduce how much emphasis gets put onto the bounty rune. I still think teams are going to like fight at the bounty runes all the time. I don't think this is going to change that, but excuse me. Oh. So I don't think this is going to change that, but what I think this is going to change is like, actually, you know what? I had a thought, but it's probably not true. So I was thinking that this is mainly going to affect like mid laners, but I mean, it affects pretty much like every lane kind of equally, you know? It's just restricting is restricting the availability of experience around the map at early levels. So getting to level 2 is going to be harder as a whole for every hero now. I mean, every hero that would have got a bounty rune. Like your support isn't going to take a bounty rune, ideally. So for all your cores or your roamers, it's just going to make it a little harder to get to level 2 all around on average. But beyond that, there's no real like lasting implication of this change. It's just something that's going to be there or not there. And that's often a common thing in Dota, where it's like people try to overanalyze, for patch notes anyway, like how this is going to affect everything as a whole, like armor types and damage types that we're going to see in a minute. It's just like, yeah, you can go into depth about all these things, but really it's like once you play it and you feel it out, it's like it doesn't change that much at all. And I'm a big proponent of like 2 base strength is a huge deal. So when I say things like this, like going into armor damage types and armor types is not like a huge thing. It just, I don't know, it's a matter of personal taste, I suppose. So like melee hero attack range, the only thing this is going to really change is when offlaners try and like get hits in on the support when you're trying to kite them. Like other than that, this doesn't honestly change too much, except you might get an extra right click in. And like when I go into short details like that, it's not that this isn't an important change, it's just that there's not much to say about it, you know? So we're going to move on. Now this is actually a really big deal. So for those of you who don't know, there's a 500 ring around each creep. And when you auto attack a hero outside of that ring, like say you have like your hero and an enemy hero, and then there's this kind of ring. If you're outside the ring when you auto attack this hero and then you walk into the ring, you won't aggro the creeps when you're auto attacking him for 2 seconds after you initiated the first auto attack. So what you'll often do as a support is you'll stand outside of like the 500 range of a creep. You'll click to attack the offlaner or whoever, or the mid laner. This is also a very big change from mid lane. And then you'll begin to auto attack them like right beside the enemy creeps, but they won't aggro you for 2 seconds. And you can just keep doing this dance over and over and getting free hits in, and the enemy offlaner or enemy mid laner will be like, how is this guy a god? If they don't know this. So what this is going to change is that it allows you to get more hits in as well. And that's what the cooldown changes. What the creep aggro means is that it's going to be easier to drag creeps for longer durations. So what you could also do was, if you stand within the 500 circle and then issue an attack command on a hero and then immediately back up, the creeps would follow you for 2 seconds. Now they're going to follow you for an even further distance, which for like mid lane creep positioning to get onto high ground and stuff is very, very important. So these like little number changes might mean the difference between it being on the low ground and being on the high ground. And as a melee versus a ranged matchup, that's a very big difference. Okay, moving on. Melee creep gold bounty reduced. Melee and range creep gold bounty upgraded over time, increased. So it's just strictly early game reduced by 2. And then it gets a little bit more throughout the game. And it takes... Yeah, it only takes 2 upgrade cycles for this to be equal. And then beyond that, after 15 minutes, it just gets more and more than it used to be. So there's just going to be more gold late game. Excuse me. I am still sick, unfortunately. Then we have the big experience changes on the range and melee creeps. So melee creeps give like 50. So before it was the melee creeps gave 50% more than range creeps. Now the range creep gives double what the melee creep gives. So when you're playing mid lane and you have like a dragon slave, you would often throw it out. The range creep would go down to 1 hit if you didn't prep it first, and then the other enemy mid laner would deny it, and it would be like, oh well, it was a range creep. not a big deal. Now it's a big deal when that happens. You always have to remember to prep the range creep, and getting the range creep deny is going to be really important in terms of experience gain. The other thing that this changes is that I believe the melee creep is worth slightly more gold than the range creep, but I'm not sure about that. But what this is also going to change is that you now would want to Midas the range creep every time instead of the melee creep, because it gives way more experience, and you get 2.5 times experience with Midas. So it's very important to remember to always Midas the range creep now. Alright, experience required to get to level 8 and 9 are rescaled from 600, 1200 to 800, 1000. So sometimes when you were playing a hero like let's say Lich, and a lot of my examples are going to be for support because that's what I mainly play. So on Lich, when you hit level 8, the skill point you put in matters a lot, and for every hero it matters a lot, but on a hero like Lich, it's like, do you get do you put a point in Frost Armor or not? Because you're not going to get it for a long time, because what would happen is that once you take over, you would need 1200 experience to get to your next level, and you'd be stuck at level 8 for a long time. So it would basically be making a decision like, do I stay without Frost Armor for this whole duration, or do I think I'm going to be stuck at level 8 for quite a while, and I should get this Frost Armor now, and sacrifice a skill point and sacrifice or blast for later. And oftentimes it was the right decision to get the Frost Armor, just because you were stuck there for so long if you couldn't find experience, or if you were dying first in a fight. So now it's just going to be smoother. No, excuse me. So yeah, now it's just going to be smoother. But this was a change that was introduced a long time ago to help people get to a certain level faster, and then you pay it back later. It would just accelerate a few levels to get people stronger through the early and mid game. But now they decided to reverse this, and that's kind of the implications it's going to have. Alright, Ethereal now blocks in-flight attack projectiles fully. So this is basically a nerf to OD and Enchantress, as I think these are the two biggest ones hit by this, because previously their pure damage would go like you would Ethereal, and their pure damage attacks would still hit you for the pure damage, and it would deal 100 damage, 100 pure damage still for each auto attack that was in the air. And because they built so much attack speed, sometimes that was like an extra 200 pure damage even after you went Ethereal. So it's like, why did I even bother going Ethereal? And then you'd still die. So now that just kind of fixes this. Evasion is now pseudo-random distribution. It always should have been. And evasion is now calculated on impact rather than on launch. The only hero this is going to really impact is Windrunner with Windrun, because most of the time evasion is constant and passive, but Windrunner has one of the only active evasions. Actually, as well as Arc Warden. I never really think of that, but that is also 100% evasion on activation. So yeah, this is only going to impact Windrunner and Arc Warden. So the Centaur, this is the little white Centaur. So his health was reduced by 200, and his armor was reduced by 1. And now the large camp spawns 2 instead of 1. So the most important thing here, and really the only important thing here, is that the large camp is going to feel like a large camp for once, because it was always the case where it was like the medium and the large were the same, and it was kind of shitty to get this in a large camp. So now you're going to get an actual large camp, and the Centaur Corsair is the one who has the magic resistance aura that applies to all the creeps, and it stacks. So now large camp spawns large camp stacks are going to be harder to take with magic damage. So if you change to Roshan, his magic resistance was reduced. It's still really inefficient to deal damage to him with magic, and I would not recommend it, but I mean, it deals a little bit more now, so that's cool. I've heard there's a lot of new items, so that I haven't actually looked at any of them, so maybe there's something that makes your auto attack deal more magic damage, and maybe that is affected by this, but I have no idea. So his HP was increased by 500 in the beginning of the game, and then 50 per minute. Just going to make Roshan a little harder, but this is the biggest change. So his experience was nerfed by 1,000 at level 1. Like, early Roshans are so weak now. And it was kind of like a gimmicky strat, you know? Like, it just kind of cheesed like games and kind of won it off the early Roshan. But I don't know, just it's like so not worth it to ever draft a level 1 Roshan lineup anymore. Like, this is actually so small. Like, split between 5 heroes. What is that? Where's my calculator? Oh, I don't have it open. Alright. Let's see. 750 divided by 5. I'm really bad at math. So yeah, if you're all in the pit, this doesn't even get you to level 2, because this is only because you need 200 experience per hero to get to level 2. So it's like, so you know how when you take a level 1 Roshan and then the enemy team tries to invade it after you've taken it because you're all low and only one guy has an Aegis and you can probably kill him twice. Now when you take it, you're not even going to be level 2 to fight them when you're low HP. It's just so risky now. But excuse me. So the other thing this nerfs, of course, is early game solo Roshaning with heroes like Ursa, heroes like Invoker, mainly. Well, mostly Ursa, but you know, this also affects heroes like Invoker and everyone else that can solo Roshan at an early level. It just nerfs their like what they'd get from it. And yeah, I mean, you get 20x per minute after the 52-minute mark, but it doesn't really matter. After the 52-minute mark, all your cores should be level like 25. Or not level 25, but like at least level 20 or something, you know? Like they should be past 16, so extra levels don't matter too much. Like they matter, yeah, I know they matter, but it's only going to really increase the experience on your supports in that case. And I mean, like, it's important, but at the same time, like, you're increasing the respawn timer. So double damage and haste no longer have special rules for being dispelled by spell immunity. So previously, the only way to get double damage and haste were while under the effects of BKB, were to have them bottled, then pop your BKB, then activate the rune from your bottle, and then you'd be able to keep them through your BKB. Now it's just, you know, getting past that really annoying step of keeping the bottle for the rune, which I kind of like. I always thought it was kind of silly that they were dispelled. In terms of balance, I mean, it kind of makes sense. You don't want a double damage PA being able to pop BKB and just like maul you to death. But I don't know, it feels like one of those things that has been a long time coming, and I'm glad it's here. Because I think it creates a more healthy environment overall in terms of what you can pull off and what you have to play around, which is important. So the following buffs are now purgeable. Most of these don't really matter, except for Malefice, Cold Snap, and potentially Corrosive Skin. But Malefice and Cold Snap are the two biggest ones. So being able to... I always thought you could purge Cold Snap because PL can do it with his W, but I guess that's a different kind of dispel. So purging Malefice I think is the biggest deal, and it's honestly a really big nerf to Witch Doctor. But purging Cold Snap, I mean... yeah, it's a big deal, but you could always just kind of... I don't know. I guess it is a big deal too. But yeah, Malefice and Cold Snap are the biggest proponents, and definitely a nerf to both heroes. Some minor adjustments to cast range mechanics to reduce overly long cast ranges. I'm so glad this is finally implemented, because this has been around since forever, and it's just total bullshit for everyone involved. Like, people just feel cheated, and you feel like you didn't deserve a kill sometimes. It's just like you get like, I don't know, like an 11 or 1200 range finger on somebody, and you're just like, that shouldn't have happened, but I mean, I guess I got a kill. Alright, illusions now benefit from damage block. There are very few heroes, and I can't think of any honestly, who build both damage block and Manta or naturally have illusions. I think the biggest synergy you'll see with this potentially is maybe like a Vanguard Spectre or something. I don't know. There's really not many heroes who want both of those things. The other thing though is that the Crimson Guard activation is damage block. So if you apply that to illusions and then potentially siege with those illusions, the enemy team can't really kill them anymore, like a Naga illusion perhaps. They're really damn tanking. If you just like send them on the racks after the tier 3 is already down, then the enemy team, like, they don't really have the means to deal with it. If you have like a 2500 HP Naga illusion hitting your racks with 50 damage block on top of it. So all these Captain's Mode changes, I don't know the overall impact they'll have because I'm not a drafter, and I mean, I can understand when heroes get picked and banned and why, for the most part, but in terms of the order and like how it's going to impact you as a drafter as a whole and how it's going to impact the competitive scene, I just have no insight into this, so I'm just going to move on. So these are the kinds of changes that I was talking about, where it's just like you're going to feel it out and it doesn't change a whole lot, so I'm not going to go too much into it. So remove strong armor type and moved affected units to soft type, which is renamed to basic type. I mean, yeah, cool. I'm sure you'll, like, the thing about this change is that you might not understand what it means right now, but as soon as you play a few games and you run into a minion or something that got an armor type change and it starts dealing more or less, or you start dealing more or less to it, I mean, then you'll notice and then you'll remember. But before that happens, it's like, you know, big deal. So Roshan armor type from basic to hero. I'm not sure what deals basic and what hero is. These are all like really obscure things that you have to go like into the back mechanic logs to, on like wikis to find out, and it's just not something you see in game ever. But in general, damage types only change things by about 25%. Like piercing damage is 150, but in terms of like heroes and what they do to like lane creeps and what like basic and hero damage, I'm pretty sure the only difference would be like about 25% or percentage points between the two. So it's like it's gonna do something, but it's not like that big. So Dark Troll Summoner's attack type from Pierce to Hero, so they will be much worse at clearing. When you pull into the Dark Troll Summoner camp now, they're just going to be much worse at it, especially because their damage is also reduced. So it's just going to be a lot harder for them to clear camps and clear waves. And the Thunderhide, which is the ancient attack type from basic to hero, I believe this decreases its damage to structures by like 25 percentage points, and its damage is also reduced. I'm not really sure why the Thunderhide, of all things, of all the ancients, was reduced, considering it was probably the easiest to kill, and I think it probably had the best auto attack, but at the same time it was like also the weakest one to have, because it just had no like, it was just not tanky enough. Like it only had like 1400 HP. Like that's not that hard to deal with compared to the like 2000 something HP Golem or the Fireball Dragon. Like I feel like those are much stronger creeps. So the Harpy Stormcrafter, that's the one with the chain lightning. That's always super annoying to deal with. Is mana pool cover reduced, so you can't just spam the hell of them. But if you have arcane boots, then this change doesn't really do much. As long as someone's around to refill the mana. And the Satyr Tormentor, this is the biggest change for sure of these two. But these creeps needed to be nerfed. The Satyr Tormentor was absolutely absurd. Being able to just like instantly win a lane and kill a hero on its own, like that should never happen. And I'm glad they nerfed it. So for the terrain changes, I have open another tab here. And we're going to take a look at some of these. right? So as you can see, they've narrowed the ramp, and I don't believe they changed too much else along the side of it here. Like you can see it narrowed it by like maybe 100 on each side. And choke points in Dota in positioning are very important for when you're going to like invade into an area. Like when you're smoking up onto a high ground and the enemy team is like, let's say, waiting for you there, for you to have funneled into a channel for them that's that narrow affects the viability of AoE damage in that area by quite a bit. And there are certain areas on a map where you'll want to pick fights over others because of choke points like that. Now this is probably the biggest change of all the terrain changes. It makes the dire offlane so much better if you're looking to stack ancients. Like let's say you're a Tidehunter, let's say you're a Beastmaster, let's say you're those kind of heroes. It increases the viability of those heroes in the dire offlane immensely. Like, excuse me. I hate being sick. Anyway, so like Tide and on Tide and Beastmaster, like they were already really good offlanes who could clear ancients really easily. But now you're just gonna be able to do it so much faster and miss out on so much less of the lane creeps from the from the lane. And honestly, that was the biggest thing about whenever you would go offlane Tide, it would be like, well, do I get like the opportunity to maybe get three creeps of EXP, or do I go stack these ancients? I mean, you'd want to pick the ancients every time, of course, but it's like, it was unfortunate that you had to miss out on the free EXP and potential last hits. Now it's like, you can just go back in there, you miss maybe one creep, and you're just going to get so much more EXP now when you want to stack ancients anyway with your hero, instead of like a summons like Beastmaster. So overall, it's just going to be much more efficient movement along the dire side for offliners who wanted to stack ancients. There are other changes in terms of like how you can move through there now, but that's the most impactful one. This thing is actually not that huge. Because previously, you'd put a ward right here anyway. Like this was a really good ward spot, because it would see movement up through here, it would see the medium camp, and it would see the other medium camp down here. So the only thing that this does is it also provides vision of the small camp, but oftentimes, like it is important to get vision of the small camp, don't get me wrong, but this isn't adding as much as it is on the Radiant side. Because on the Radiant side, there's all those like gnarls and corners and everything, where that spot is the only one where you can see both camps. With this spot here, it was already a good spot, and now it's just you're adding one here, but it's because you add this spot here, it's way more likely to also get dewarded. So because this is here, like it adds a better possible spot where you can see 3 camps, and that's good, but it also increases the likelihood that they're going to deward over here, which is very unfortunate, because warding here before was honestly really good, and it would only get dewarded sometimes, not all the time. But now it feels like this is going to get dewarded all the time, and that sucks actually. So it's not really like a buff to Radiant wards over here. It's more like a buff to dire defensive wards, and the dire's ability to better guess where you're going to ward, because now this whole area is going to be sentryed more often. It also makes it so that melee heroes can't deward over here, which is really annoying as a melee hero. But beyond that, the rest of my points are pretty much cover everything. Skipped a little too far ahead. Sorry. So they basically just removed a few trees in here. That's it. They really didn't do that much. They also, what it isn't too obvious though, they moved the tower. Like look where that is. That's such a weird spot. I'm pretty sure now with the reduced true sight range, you can walk through here as an invis hero and stay invis without being spotted. Where previously, I believe like you could still walk through there, and I'm not sure if the tower would actually see you or not. I really should know that, because I walk through there so often. Excuse me. But now for sure, it's just like a really weird and inconvenient spot compared to where it used to be right over here. Like, fighting for this is going to be so much odder. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a definite... it's going to feel very odd playing through this game, playing through Dota with this change. The other thing to notice is that, like, look over here. It doesn't see up this way. Like previously, like, look at that. It looks straight up. And that's a big difference between what it sees. So here you'll notice, okay, yeah, you would get seen every time. I don't know why I didn't remember that. I just wasn't sure. But yeah, the big thing was that they changed a few trees in here and added a juke path, which, honestly, this tower change is way more impactful in terms of what it's seeing and where to move to. They also added a juke path in here, where you can just walk right through here. Not much else to say about it, really. It's just nice to have extra juke spots to increase some skill in the game. I'm always a fan of juke spots. Not that I always learn them in a timely fashion, but, you know, eventually you'll get to know. And it's always fun to make a really nice juke. It's one of the best feelings in Dota, I think. So you'll see they added an extra juke path all the way through here to get through all those little nooks and crannies. Previously, you couldn't get through this one. And you would need to eat, I believe, 2 trees there. And you could get through here before. They just changed the way it looks a little bit. And that appears to be everything. Right. Spaced out Radiant Tier 4 tower slightly. I believe this is because of Jakiro Liquid Fire affecting both of the Radiant, but not both of the Dire. I believe that was how it used to work. I'm not sure. I know it used to affect one, and I know it used to affect both, and then on the other side only affect one, but I'm not sure which side is which. And I'm not sure about how they're going to adjust spawn boxes. Like it says, adjusted, and moved and everything, but you have to see it in game, and now that you have the alt click, it'll be much more obvious how these changes affect the spawn boxes. As before, where you had to go into like a custom game to figure it all out. Okay. Now we get to the fun stuff. I have not seen any of these items. I have no idea what I'm going in for. All I've heard from one person is that there are bananas. So I don't know what that means, but we're gonna go through it right now. So Orchid, Crystallis, and a recipe. So I'm gonna give my prediction right now. It does not give spells critical chance. I think that's ridiculous if it did that. And I say that because it has a Crystallis and not just some like other like mana item, because Crystallis is like an auto attack modifier. So what I'm assuming is this does some sort of maybe magical damage crit or something. Well, let's see what happens. Okay, so it costs 7,200 gold, which is a hell of a lot of gold. You're not going to see this very often. Alright, 25 intelligence, 30 sack speed, 60 damage. It's basically the int butterfly. That's what I'm seeing right here. All attacks on the silenced target, including from allies, gain True Strike and 1.35 critical hit. Let's see what the little arrows say. Still applies the same silence mechanics from Orchid. Cooldown. Okay. That's a pretty big reduction on the downtime. 5-second silence with 18-second cooldown to 11-second cooldown. You're gonna get that off twice, maybe 3 or 4 times in a fight, depending on how long they go. Passive grants a chance to land a critical hit. Same values as Crystallis, which is, pretty decent. Crystallis is a nice DPS increase. Alright, so let's go into this a little more. So 25 intelligence, 30 attack speed, 60 damage, and mana regen. It costs 7,200. Will you ever see that? Like, what heroes is this really good on? The main one that I'm thinking right away is like Queen of Pain, perhaps. You know, because Queen of Pain has a lot of like, you want Ags and BKB and everything, but an Orchid on Queen of Pain in several matchups, not every matchup, but several matchups, is really, really favorable for the Queen of Pain if you get an Orchid. And there are definitely other heroes who benefit from this, but it's so expensive. Like, when would they get it? You know, that's the big thing with items is expensive, is you don't want to like read too much into them because they're just so expensive that they're not as efficient as getting a different item earlier on in the game. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, especially if maybe due to some buffs or nerfs, some heroes are better with this now than others, how they would have been previously. But it's just like, it's not such a huge upgrade in terms of the active that I think it'll be picked up too often as like a third item or so. Like, it's just giving a slight increase in DPS and True Strike, countering evasion, which I'm wondering is going to be a theme this patch or not. But either way, yeah, it's a really interesting item. It's just going to be one of those things like Moonshard where you get to a point late game where you just have this Orchid and it's just like, I mean, it's okay, but it's not a sheep, so then you swap it out for a sheep. But now you're going to be incentivized to keep the Orchid and upgrade it into something else. So I think that about does it for that item. So Echo Saber, Oblivion Staff, and Ogre Club. So I'm going to guess, let's see. So that gives mana regen, that gives strength. That's just too basic, I have no idea what this could be. Let's see what we get. Alright. 2,650 gold, 10 strength, 10 intelligence, 10 attack speed, 15 damage, some mana regen. Causes melee attacks to attack twice in quick succession. Your double attack applies a 0.6 second, 100% movement speed and attack speed slow. Has a 5-second cooldown. Note the passive only works on melee heroes. I'm thinking, would you ever want to buy this on a ranged hero? It doesn't say if this is disassemblable or not, so I'm going to assume it's not. Unfortunately. I always like disassemblable items, just to build into the late game. I think it's a really interesting concept to disassemble. But moving on to what heroes would greatly benefit from this. Because it's basically like a Geminate attack, you know? But it also applies a slow. So it's 10 strength, 10 intelligence, 10 attack speed, and 15 damage. Let's get a list of all the heroes up here. So 10 strength, 10 intelligence, and a movement slow. Perhaps a life stealer? Because you don't want to get this on heroes where it impedes another item. Like, okay, perhaps I'm just going to exit a full screen here, just to make this faster. Okay. So it gives 10 strength, 10 intelligence, 10 attack speed, 15 damage. So you don't want to get this on heroes where it impedes like a more important item, because it's just like kind of granular, you know? Like it's not so much stats like an armlet where it's like a huge increase to strength and damage. It's just kind of like 10 here, 10 there, 10 here, 15 there, and a little bit of mana regen. It's all just little bits. So you're going to want to get this mainly for the passive of melee heroes attacking twice. So for burst damage instances, let's see. Would you ever want to get this on Tiny? That's actually a big increase in damage. Heroes like Sven and Tiny, where they don't necessarily have too much attack speed, but they have a lot of right click damage, is definitely an interesting concept on those heroes. I don't think you'd ever want to get this on Legion because you'd rather have Shadow Blade or Blink, and then possibly a Blade Mail or SNY or a Solar Crest. All of those items seem better. And because it gives strength and intelligence and not any sort of agility, you might still want, you might want to build it on agility heroes for sure, because it does give like 10 damage still and 15 attack speed. It's just you're not going to get as much effectiveness out of the item as the other two attribute heroes would. So what heroes of agility would want it? I don't think Juggernaut would really care for it too much, because you generally want more attack speed on that hero than what this item provides, because it's only 15 attack speed. There's no agility in it either. So I don't think it's too great on Juggernaut. On Ursa, the 10 int kind of helps, and the mana regen's nice. Getting 2 attacks off for free with no mana cost. I could see an argument for Ursa. For Slark, like on Ursa, you definitely have good item choices, like you have Blink, BKB, Aghanim's. These are all very important items, but I can see how you would want a mid-game item like that, because you do want some mana item on Ursa. It's really nice. So you don't really care for it on Faceless Void. Phantom Assassin, I can see possibly, but very unlikely, because getting to it, like you want a lot of hits on Phantom Assassin, but I just feel like it does synergize with the burst aspect of the hero, but it's just in general, I don't know. It's definitely a possibility. We'll have to see how things develop later on in the patch notes for it to be anywhere mildly accurate, really. This is all just theory craft. I don't think you'd ever want to get it on Slark, because his right click isn't too big on its own. You want more attack speed on that hero for sure. So for in heroes, there's no int melee heroes, so this doesn't really apply to anything. So yeah, I think Tiny is definitely a big contender for this, because he wants everything that's in this item. It's just, does it replace other items? And that's the real hard question to answer. I am thinking about this, but at the same time, it's 0.6 seconds. It's not huge. MAME on SNY, I think, is much more impactful than this, and that never gets talked about when you talk about those items. All right, Blightstone, just a straight up new item. Reduces armor by 2 on attack, available in the side shop. Item is used in Desolator and Medallion of Courage. That'll probably replace the recipe. That's interesting. Okay, so reduces armor by 2 on attack. It feels really inefficient, But that might just be because my math is off. I don't mean inefficient in terms of the damage it allows you to output. I mean inefficient in terms of slot efficiency. Because often in the early game you want a lot of granular items that are good later on. You want a TP, you want boots, you want an early game item, you want a Ring of Aquila, you want maybe drums, just stuff like that. And maybe you want a wand, and maybe you want to hold an inventory slot for dust. It feels inefficient in terms of slots for sure. Quelling Blade is not slot inefficient at all compared to this, Quelling Blade increases your farming efficiency by so much, whereas this, I don't know, it feels like if you're doing a lot of harass on heroes, it doesn't change a heck of a lot. I find it hard to see a way that this becomes a big item. Because you have Orb of Venom as well, and Orb of Venom just feels like it gets more damage in due to being able to get an extra auto attack in per se, or something like that. So you'd want to get this maybe on ranged heroes instead. Like, could you get this on sniper or something to increase your damage? I guess so. I guess I can see this being okay on sniper. It's just the fact that it offers no stats whatsoever that makes me hesitant on this item. But anyway, I think we spent enough time on that. Infused raindrops. New consumable item. Costs 225 gold. Provides 0.85 mana regen. About the same as a Sobi. Or not a Sobi, a ring. Passive comes with 5 charges. The item is destroyed when it reaches 0 charges. When you receive over 50 magic damage, it procs, consuming a charge and blocking 120 magic damage. The proc has a 4-second cooldown. Becomes available for purchase at the 3-minute mark. Interesting. So it protects against dives by magic damage. Comes with 5 charges. The item is destroyed when it reaches 0 charges. Okay, so when you receive over 50 magic damage, it will drop a charge and create a barrier of 120 magic damage around you. I can't imagine a different way that it would work. But then how long does the shield last? Oh, okay, never mind. I see how it works now. I was wrong. So let's say you get hit by a dragon slave. So this would proc during the damage calculation and block 120 of that. It would not activate after you get 50 and then create a shield. It would just... Okay. So I'm assuming this is in single instances, so that you can't bait it out with like an ion shell. That's interesting. So certain abilities bypass this, like ion shell, because they do granular damage, not in... That's less than 50 magic damage in an instant. Because I'm assuming this is all in instances and not over time, because it has nothing to do with durations anywhere. So this has like no effect on Darkseer or anything like that. Interesting. So because it has a 4-second cooldown, if you get all your combo off before that, it's only 120 magic damage it blocks, but if you get it twice, it's 240, and that's basically your whole skill. But I'm going to refer back to Dragon Slave a lot just because it's a very basic, the Glean is a very basic hero archetype. So let's say you have this after the 3-minute mark when you're laning against a Lina. So you get Dragon Slaved. You block the Dragon Slave for the most part. Yeah, it goes on cooldown for 4 seconds. She can't kill you anymore because you just blocked 120 magic damage, which is 90 HP, which is a lot to get through. So now you don't die anymore, and you have 4 more charges of not dying anymore. Should I say solo Lina? Seems pretty good. I'm just, like, becomes available for purchase at the 3-minute mark, costs 225 gold. I like that it does give mana regen though. Like, I like that it does give something, and it's not just like a passive item in your inventory that you keep to save yourself from magic damage nukes. Because, yeah. I feel like there's not a specific hero that buys this, it's just a matchup dependent thing, and almost all heroes benefit from it equally in terms of what they get if their lane opponent is magic damage based. And there's not many abilities that bait this, you know? Because a big thing about this is that it procs on over 50 and it blocks 120. So like, what deals like 60 magic damage and can like bait a few charges out like over and over and over and over. The only one I'm thinking of is potentially PA Dagger. There aren't very many other abilities that deal like somewhat small instances of magic damage consistently. Like the other instance I think was like Quills from Bristleback, but that's not magic damage. And this is specifically magic damage and not like spell damage like with Aether Lens. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this affects certain laning matchups like Lina and Queen of Pain on all those. Actually, yeah, Queen of Pain. Yeah. So when you dagger somebody, it deals over 50, but then this only blocks that initial damage, and then the rest of the dagger procs still go through. That's definitely one of them. Interesting indeed. I'm gonna have fun laning with that, hopefully. Alright, Wind Lance. Another cheap item. They're adding a lot of cheap items, really increasing the diversity in terms of what you can build early on. 225 gold, 20 movement speed available in the side shop, items used in drums and mules. Multiple instances don't stack. What a weird change to Dota. What a time to be alive. A little over half the cost of boots and half the effectiveness. I really hope this isn't one of those you have to buy this on like every hero because movement speed is so important. I really don't want this to be like I have to buy this now as a support, because I feel like as a support I'm gonna have to buy this all the time. And I honestly don't like that. Oh god. I'm gonna have to spend 225 gold all the time on this item instead of wards or something. And if I don't, I'll get chased down and I'll get killed. That feels so shitty, honestly. Alright, I don't like this item. Moving on. Tome of Knowledge, new consumable item. What? Alright, that's the kind of real reaction that you get from this kind of format. What the fuck is that? Costs 150 gold. Grants you 425 experience. Alright, so you know how a wave of creeps is, you know how a wave of creeps is like 200 something experience, like 250 or 200, maybe like 220 experience? This is basically almost 2 creep waves. God, that's crazy. So I'm assuming it's not, okay, so it's not as big a deal as my shock would imply. So there's only one every 10 minutes, and only one hero can buy it, and only one hero can use it. So it's basically like one hero every 10 minutes gets an EXP boost. 10 minutes is a long time in Dota. Games can end in 20 minutes. You would only get this twice. So the longer games go, the more, not likely, the more certainty there will be that every hero will get to level 25 at some point because of this item. The thing to note here is that you're going to have to fight for this a lot in pubs, which is going to be really annoying. Somebody's always going to want to buy this before you. It's just going to be every single person spamming this to see if they can buy it first, and that sucks. That's what I don't like about things like this in Dota. just in terms from a pub perspective, like I can appreciate what they add to the competitive scene for sure. Like I can understand how this can be used tactically, and all those things are great. It's just like it feels shitty knowing that no one's gonna want to like agree to give this to somebody at low level games. Not that I really play it. I think low level games, like the games I played, are okay. They're not great, but they're okay. But it's just for the people in low level games. I feel for them. All right, the last item, Hurricane Pike. New item formed from Force Staff, Dragon Lance, and a recipe. That is an expensive item. 4,375. Cheap recipe though. Gotta love cheap recipes. Alright. So, 20 agility, 15 strength, 10 intelligence, some HP regen, and plus attack range. When used on an enemy, it pushes you both away from each other, 450 units each, and allows you to attack that target. Excuse me. And allows you to attack that target without range restrictions for 4 attacks for a maximum of 5 seconds. Does not give vision over the enemy. Works normally like Force Staff when used on self or allies. Okay, so Force Staff is 20. So it's a shorter cooldown Force Staff if you want to use it on yourself or allies, which is nice. Very nice. What a weird item. What the fuck is Dota right now? Okay. When used on an enemy, it pushes you both away from each other, 450 units each, and allows you to attack that target without range restrictions for 4 attacks for 5 seconds. For a maximum of 5 seconds. Range restriction is not removed when used by a melee hero. Okay, so when you're a melee hero, okay, so this is mainly used for, damn, I'm thinking about Puck right now. Not in terms of Puck buying this item, but in terms of Puck being able to push people more or somebody being able to push people more reliably in a certain direction for Puck coil to break. That's a pretty big buff. So, forced movement on an opponent is always a big thing in Dota. Being able to drag them with lasso, being able to move them with walrus kick, even though that ability sucks and you should almost never buy Ags on him. But things that move heroes against their will are always going to be huge. So as odd as this item is, and as weird and backwards and high potential skill cap for this item can be, with pushing heroes, pushing yourself away, like it creates a huge gap between the two of you. 900 range pushing away from you. Like, you'll both move so far away from each other, and it allows you to attack the target without range restrictions as a ranged hero. Would Dro ever want to buy this? I feel like Dro could reliably buy this item, and it's like decent. Like this fits into Dro's toolkit really well in terms of her kiting other heroes and attacking from God knows how long away with no range restrictions. Let's see. So if you're right beside each other, it's 900. If you have the standard cast range, which is 400, then it's 1300 away. You can attack people from 1300 range. That's going to be so weird to see. Like, this is one of those things where you have to see it to believe it. It's just, it's too sudden and too much of a change for you to be able to just look at this item and be like, okay, yeah, I get the implications of this item. Like, no, you're gonna see this item in games a few times and just look up at the stars and think, what is life? What is Dota right now? Alright, item changes. Bash damage reduced. Recipe cost reduced. Cheaper bashers. I like cheaper bashers. I like a cheap bash. I like a bash. Alright. Not much to say about it. Abyssal Blade now requires Basher, Vanguard, and a huge recipe. Cost slightly reduced. A lot less damage. A fucking ton of less damage. And it provides a little bit of tankability and a lot of HP regen now. And damage block. Okay, so people have been saying since the dawn of Dota that Vanguard should build into things to make it viable. And that's how you make Vanguard good. This right here is how you make Vanguard good. Remember what I said earlier about not many illusion-based heroes want to build damage block? Anti-Mage, he wants to build an Abyssal, and he gets Manta. So this change really benefits AM, I think, more than any other hero in terms of those two things in conjunction. Is it an overall buff that he gets tankier illusions and deals way less damage on Abyssal Blade? Perhaps. The cooldown's also reduced by a lot, so you might be able to get 2 off in a team fight instead of it being a one-time thing if it goes long, which is important. Or a bash damage reduced. Bash damage reduced though. This item just deals way less damage and is way more about the bash now and the tank ability it provides and the sustain it provides instead of the burst, really expensive, let's kill a hero now kind of item that it used to be. Because, like, seriously, going from 70 to 10 and getting dropped by 35 damage here, that is a huge decrease in overall damage. I cannot stress how big 60 damage reduction is on an item. And I'm curious to see how much is going to be bought at all after this, honestly. It's a huge nerf. Like, it got buffed in other ways, but it's just such a big nerf. Buff to Vanguard, though, for sure. It's nothing but a buff to Vanguard, which is kind of nice to see, I suppose. Alright, moving on. Aether Lens. Aether Lens spell amplification reduced from insignificant to almost not there. That's how I'm going to read that. It was, barely there before, and now it's almost gone. Cool. I mean, it was such a universally bought item anyway. I mean, this isn't going to see any reduction in how often it's bought, I don't think. The only thing that would do that is another big item change down below, or one of the above mentioned items. But they didn't seem to be catering to supports in much of any way in terms of items that stay with you for the remainder of the game. It was all right-click based things for melee ranged and silenced and the Orchid. Anyway, Animal Courier. Respawn time reduced slightly, so level 1 Courier snipes are less impactful. Okay. Unholy Strength now grants 5 armor. Damn. You're doubling the armor of Armlet when it's active. I really can't see how this isn't the most cost-efficient item in the game. This is like literally the most value you will ever get out of gold, and I am afraid for when this gets bought more often, because it enables heroes to fight so much earlier than other items would otherwise, because you just get so many stats and armor and damage and attack speed out of one item. It's really, really good. Blade Mail now returns damage before any kind of reduction and returns it in the same type as it was received. No longer ignores spell immune enemies. So this is now dispersion without the damage reduction. Alright, you're just getting this is basically what that is. It's literally the exact same thing. It's just 100% dispersion on the target that hit you, and you're dealing the damage back in physical or magical or pure, whatever you received it in. So if it returns damage before armor reduction and returns it in the same type as it was received, it's essentially you throw out an auto attack, it deals 150 damage. It is not, you send back 150 damage, then you reduce, okay, better. You get hit by an auto attack for 150, you send back 150 physical, then you reduce the damage you took by your armor value, and he reduces the 150 by his armor value. That's how this is going to work from now on. In terms of what that does, it makes Blade Mail a way better item on Axe. I think that is the biggest change by far to Blade Mail right now. It is a huge buff to Blade Mail Axe, and that really increases Axe's viability as a whole, in all honesty, because Blade Mail was one of his favorite items to buy, but it sucked when you had 40 armor and you didn't take any damage. So now he's going to be dishing out a ton of damage while taking none in his armor. Initial charges increase from 8 to 12. Wow. I believe these give 1 mana each, perhaps actually 2. Maybe 2 mana each for each charge. Regardless, it is a huge incentive to buy Bloodstone when you get that many extra charges in terms of the heal it provides when you die, when you first buy it, and how much mana it provides. I think this is mostly because it was just kind of getting phased out by cheaper items, and then also Octarine Core. It filled the same kind of spot in your inventory, not the same role necessarily, but the same kind of spot in your inventory, which is a late game, large raw HP, raw mana item that provides an upside. And now it's going to be a little bit more diversified in terms of this provides a ton of fucking mana regen, whereas Octarine Core only ever provided 100, but it had the life steal and cooldown stuff that offsetted enough that it was generally thought of as better. And buying both was really expensive and not very worth it most of the time. Sometimes you would do it though. Anyway, flutter cooldown reduced from 35 to 25. Alright, you can flutter now, more often. I mean, it increases your movability around the map a little bit, but not much to say about it. Cooldown reduced. HP regen increased by 2. See the Vanguard change. Got it, I will see the Vanguard change. Just a nice little buff to the item. It helps with sieging high ground more, I suppose, since the cooldown is reduced. Other than that, not much to talk about. Now requires a Blightstone instead of a recipe, as I thought it would. Purge cooldown increased from 0 to 2. It sort of decreases the kind of plays you can make with it, but it also makes it so you won't waste a charge anymore, like you used to do with 0 cooldown, because you would like try and like spam it on yourself, and then you'd blow through like 2 charges or 3 charges instead of 1, and you'd feel really shitty. My throat is burning, like it is on fire, but I must persevere. Mana burn by melee ranged illusions reduced from 25, 12 to 20 and 10. Mana burn by melee ranged heroes increased. Okay. So what they're doing is reducing the overall effectiveness of I'll say it, PL. They're kind of just nerfing PL's illusions in terms of his diffusal, I'll say, gimmick. Because he makes the most illusions, of course, and he benefits the most from illusions getting full mana burn. So now that it's mostly a primary hero thing, it's definitely a shift towards heroes like Juggernaut, who sometimes wouldn't even buy a Manta when they got a Diffusal Blade. Sometimes they'd still get an S&Y. But you still wanted the mana for purging stuff and reducing movement speed of enemy heroes. So now it's going to be more focused and tailored towards those kind of occurrences and reduced effectiveness on melee illusion heroes who would buy it before, mainly PL. Right, Dragonlance now requires Ogre Club and 2 times Band of Elvenskin, so agility instead of Quarterstaff. So increase slightly, but doesn't really do anything. 15 strength, 15 agility, instead of 10 damage and 10 attack speed. So if you are not an agility hero, then this is just reducing the damage by 10. But if you are an agility hero, it's increasing the damage by 5. So now this item gets a lot better on Dro, for instance, because you get more strength and more agility, which is exactly what you want on a hero like Dro. And slightly worse on heroes like OD and Enchantress, because you no longer get the damage. Not that you care about damage when you have a 100 pure damage or 200 pure damage or however much pure damage you're dishing out, kind of a thing on your auto attack. The damage is really just who cares at that point on those heroes, but this does reduce it for them specifically. Drum of Endurance now requires Bracer, Rain of Protection, Windlands, Windlace, and a 700 recipe. Cost reduced. Man, Drum is the most changed item in Dota, I swear. It gets these minute changes every single time in terms of its cost and what it provides. Alright, what new concoction of stats will Drum give me? 9 to everything, 3 damage, now provides 9 int, 6 strength, 3 agility, 3 damage, and 3 HP regen. The fact that it provides regen now is actually a big deal, because previously the problem with Drums was it was just a pile of stats and some movement speed that had no regen, basically, in it. And now that it provides regen, you can definitely argue for its viability more often on certain heroes that lacked HP regen. Off the top of my head, I definitely can't pick a hero out of my mind, but I know they exist. And with that stunning insight, we will go on to what the stats provide. So it's definitely a nerf to agility and somewhat to strength heroes, because it just provides a little bit less, well, yes, it provides a little bit less. Thank you, Mark. Stunning analysis. But mostly for agility heroes. So what agility heroes would normally get from? Let's see. You would often see it on a hero like perhaps Luna. You'd see it on Juggernaut. Maybe Phantom Lancer. Perhaps a Sniper. You never really see it on Ember Spirit anymore. You used to see it sometimes, but it's just very rare nowadays. Because normally you just go Ring of Aqua and it's more efficient. You wouldn't really see it on Slark either. Sometimes you might see it on Terrorblade. I could see that for Terrorblade. The HP regen helps on this hero too. Okay, perfect example actually. This is a hero who benefits from the HP regen a lot because he does not normally get lifesteal or any sort of sustain item. He just kind of survives based on his illusions tanking for him. But for Terrorblade in specific, this is a pretty good chance that he gets the HP regen, and he doesn't mind too much that the agility goes down because he naturally has a lot of base damage and he just wants to tank up. So this is probably going to make it a lot more viable on Terrorblade specifically. Alright, Yule Scepter Divinity now requires Windlace instead of a Sage's Mask. Alright, so now I can't buy a casual Sage's Mask. That's unfortunate. Flying Courier cost reduced even more. That's nice. It's 50 gold that I get to spend now on my Windlace that I have to buy every time. True sight radius reduced from 1100 to 900. There's a lot of buffs going on to Invis in terms of the way that they can move around the map more reliably. And it's definitely something to note with heroes like Bounty Hunter, that looking forward into the patch for the hero notes, I'm interested to see how Bounty and Ricky and Clinks in particular, maybe I'm missing another Invis hero, but those heroes in particular, perhaps actually Shadowblade, Shadowblade Slark, heroes like that, or just Shadowblade in general really, how they all get changed, if it all at all reflects how the maneuverability of those heroes has increased overall. So Ghost Form cooldown reduced from 30 to 25. Alright. You didn't buy this too often, honestly, as a support. Normally you would buy Aether Lens more often, just because it fit your item progression better, and it provided you more offensive benefit and defensive benefit in terms of positioning, which in most cases is the, I'll say, educated man's tank ability in Dota, because you don't need to build health if you are able to position yourself in a way that you can't get hit in the first place. And that's the biggest thing that Aether Lens provides. And why Ghost Scepter wasn't bought as often. Still a good item, but especially with the large availability of diffusal carriers, like Spectre and PL specifically, you would get your Ghost Scepter purged. And then it's like, well, this was a shitty item. This did nothing that I wanted it to. And then you die. So Ghost Scepter getting a nice buff after Diffusal Blade gets a slight nerf. You know, maybe you want to buy this more often now. Glimmer Cape, mana cost reduced from 110 to 90. You know, you wouldn't see this item as often anymore after the Aether Lens came out. It just, like, Aether Lens changed a lot of builds in that sense, that Glimmer Cape was still like an okay item, but with the huge viability of Spectre, who will find you wherever you are and is a pretty good gem carrier for that reason, and heroes like Bounty Hunter, who will always have track on you, ideally, Glimmer Cape was not as good because it was much easier to be scouted. But, you know, a nice little buff to Glimmer Cape. Maybe you want to pick it up some more now on heroes where the mana cost was maybe a little bit of an issue. Like, I remember a few times with Winter Wyvern, it was like, you wanted Glimmer Cape, but you really wanted that 110 mana to have another usage of your E in a team fight. And sometimes if you had Glimmer Cape, then, especially as like a first item, you wouldn't have enough mana overall to cast a ton of your spells over and over and over. You would sometimes even forgo ever casting your Q, unless it was to run away over a tree line, just because you wanted to have mana for your other spells. And now that it's reduced slightly, I mean, you might be able to get it off, or otherwise you wouldn't be able to. And, you know, that's always impactful in a team fight. So Guardian Greaves increased by 50. Okay, nothing interesting to say about that. Heart of Tarask, strength bonus increased from 40 to 45, health bonus reduced from 30 to 250. So 5 times 20 is 100, so it increased by 50. Okay, if you're not a strength hero, basically all you need to know is that this got increased by 50 health. Cool. If you're a strength hero, it gives also 5 more damage now. So if you stack 2 of these on CK, like you're going to do because he's CK and he loves heart more than any other item in the game, your illusions deal 25 more damage now. Awesome. I love CK. Anyway, Heaven's Halberd, disarm duration on ranged targets increased from 4.5 to 5.5. So what ranged heroes are... Well, I can think of OD. Yeah, okay. I can think of OD, I can think of Invoker, I can think of Enchantress. Are there any other ranged auto attack heroes that are owned right now? Now let's go through the list. So Invoker, OD, Death Prophet's not really prevalent. Queen of Pain's sometimes picked, but not really prevalent. One Ranger, can see play. That definitely is a nerf to Wind Ranger, for sure. It has no change on most of these heroes, just due to them not being picked too often, so the change doesn't impact the game as a whole too often. I guess it's Templar Assassin, you can make an argument for it affecting her quite a bit. And then, you know, Huskar and them doesn't really matter. But yeah, it doesn't really do too much in the terms of what it does to the current meta. But it'll be interesting to see where the meta goes from here, and how Heaven's Halberd might become a much more viable item, considering it's already pretty much like on the cusp of being a item that you could reasonably buy in many situations. Like it does see play from time to time in competitive play. It's just not that often that you think of it as a staple anywhere. Hood of Defiance. Removed one ring of regen from Hood of Defiance. Okay, so they just HP regen updated to match Ring of Health and recipe change. What recipe change? I'm blanking on the recipe change. I guess there's a Ring of Health down below that got changed. Okay, good to know. I guess we'll see what happens. Lincoln Sphere. Recipe cost reduced by a lot, 325 gold. That's quite significant. It goes from like 5150 or 5125 to like 480 now. Yeah, about that. I think it's like 480 right now. Okay, so 480 on Lincoln Sphere. That sounds pretty appealing when you compare it to Lotus Orb now. Yeah, when you compare these two, Lincoln Sphere sounds much more appealing. Sometimes, actually. Well, you know, it's matchup dependent and all that, but 325 gold is definitely quite a bit. And you're definitely going to, like, it basically means being able to pick it up 1.5 creep waves sooner, which means you could potentially survive a gank you otherwise wouldn't have, which, in terms of item timings, is always very important. And it's also going to change how early you need to gank a hero rushing Lincoln Sphere, like perhaps a Morphling, in order to you know, make him waste his gold on his death and not be able to purchase the recipe. So, you know, overall, a decent buff to Lincoln Sphere. I like that change. I like buying Lincoln Sphere personally, and it's just not quite viable enough to justify it on most heroes. But now hopefully we get to see it more. So Lotus Orb now requires an energy booster instead of a 900 gold recipe. Interesting. Now provides 250 mana. Lotus Orb was already an item that you would see, and now it's just getting a straight up buff. And you can also disassemble Arcane Boots into Lotus Orb now. That change alone, it brings Lotus Orb into a much more feasible realm where you can purchase it fairly reliably at a decent timing, instead of before where the 900 gold recipe would kind of put you off of the item because you would buy it so late with like a Perseverance and a plate mail and a recipe. It was just like you didn't really want to buy those items mid-game, but now that you can do the energy booster from a disassembled Arcane Boots into it, you can pick it up a full 900 gold earlier than you would have been able to before if you go with that build. And it also enables heroes like heroes that wouldn't have otherwise bought Arcane Boots can now justify it if Lotus Orb is a good item for that game. So I feel like we're going to see more Arcane Boot because of this item, and we're going to see more Lotus Orbs definitely because of this change. It really increases the viability of the item quite a bit. Active damage amplification reduced, reducing the drawback cost of the Mask of Madness a little bit. Alright, I can't really give too much analysis on that. Just kind of a boring change. Now requires Blightstone instead of a recipe. Observer Ward. Gold experience rescaled from 50, 100 to 125. A lot of gold, less experience. Duration reduced back to what it used to be. Restock interval reduced, so you get more wards on a harder to remember timing. And cost reduced from 75 to 65. I guess it means all of these percentage changes are all equal. Cool. Thanks for the tip. So this, along with the bounty rune change to not give experience anymore, is going to greatly reduce the availability of early game experience, and it's going to give a further emphasis on the level 1 ability of a hero and how easy it is for them to get to their second level. Because let's put it like this, just as an example as a support player. So if you are facing an offlane who got the bounty rune, and it's just you versus them and you're trying to zone them, and they get enough creeps to reach their level 2, even though you've zoned them properly and kept them like really far back, not like you've kept them far back from the experience range, but let's say your carry messed up and it's pushing a little bit, and they're like, they can stay just within like 1300 range without being within range of you as a support to harass them reliably, and then you can pull it and bring the lane back. But because they've already gotten a few creeps from that, even though they were denied, they've suddenly hit their level 2. Then now it's just gonna be more difficult for them to reach their level 2, and it's going to God, I don't know where I'm going with this anymore. I have no idea where I'm going with this anymore. I just kind of blanked out there. Alright, but basically exactly what I said I was going to do. It's going to reduce experience gain throughout the early levels. The 100 gold part is interesting because so it does increase though the availability of gold on the map too. As a support, you're also going to have trouble finding your level 2, which I don't know why I didn't mention and went with the bounty rune example. And now that I think about it, it was really stupid of me. But anyway, regardless, as a support, it's going to be harder to find your level 2 now. It's an interesting thing to play around, because often you would get a D-ward early on. Like, you could fairly reliably get a D-ward as a support. Maybe in like one every 3 games, 1 every 2 games, perhaps, you would get a free D-ward. Or not free, but like a good D-ward, let's say. So now heroes like Bane and heroes of that variety who have a really strong level 1 skill, like Brain Sap or Nightmare on Bane, either one of the two, they're going to be more viable just because they can do their role without their second level. But heroes like Shadow Shaman, where they have to pick between either a disable or a shock, and they can't really trade hits without shock, and they can't really do anything to an offlaner without the shackle, then for them it's going to be much harder, definitely. Anyway, I've rambled for way too long about that. Onto Octarine Core. No longer provides HP regen. Mana regeneration reduced from 100% to 50%. I don't believe it gave that much HP regen. Maybe like 8, maybe 5. It never really gave that. Okay, so it had I think it. Yeah, it never really gave that much. So basically, what this change does is it diversifies it from Bloodstone, more again. Just in line with the Bloodstone buff did. HP regeneration increased from 5 to 6. Alright. See Ring of Health change. Removed pipe of insight barrier stack limit duration. Removed pipe of insight barrier stack limit duration. I believe this means that if you have 2 pipes, that if you activate one, it goes away. Then you activate another one a few seconds after. It won't have that cooldown aura on a hero or a creep where it won't work anymore, and you need to wait for that buff to go away. Now it's just you put a barrier on, then you wait for them to do magic damage to your creeps or whatever, and you activate another barrier on another hero who has pipe. Which, do you want to build 2 pipes? I guess if it helps you break high ground and win the game, then yeah, you might want to. And if you're facing a really heavy magic damage lineup, you might want to. But I think that's what that change means. So what kind of heroes does that really affect, though? Like, it affects Zeus the most, I think. Because if you can build 2 pipes and block 800 magic damage off of Zeus, like that's almost an entire rotation of his spells. That's pretty big. It also makes going high ground against a Coddle much, much easier. I can't really think of other heroes who output a significant amount of AoE magic damage over a short period of time than those two. But I mean, just against magic heavy lineups in general, it's going to be kind of devastating if you just stack a few of these. And by a few, I mean like a maximum of 2. I really don't think you're ever going to want to build more than 2 of these. Because then the enemy team's lineup is just bad if they rely completely on magic damage. And you would have won the game anyway with BKBs or something. Okay, point booster, health bonus reduced, and mana bonus increased. Okay. Item build into our update accordingly. Okay. It's just a slight change, nothing really to say. Refresher HP regeneration increased from 10 to 12. Gotcha. Armor reduced from 3 to 2. 3 to 2. Got it. Okay. Only the aura gives armor now. Oh. Okay. Okay. So that means if you have 2 Ring of Aquilas on your team, which can happen considering some heroes who shouldn't build Aquila. I shouldn't say they shouldn't build Aquila because, it's a really good item. But some heroes like Invoker or OD sometimes might build an Aquila, and then your carry might build an Aquila. So then you get slightly less effectiveness out of those items because you get 1 less armor between the 2 of you. Alright, Ring of Basilius. Armor bonus reduced from 3 to 2. Again. Damage bonus increased from 6 to 7. Alright. Okay. Okay. Remove chance to true strike on the target. What? Okay. So, I can understand removing the chance to true strike on the target. I get it. But why didn't they reduce the cooldown back to 10 seconds? Was it really too strong? Was it really getting bought on heroes? Ever? No. Reduce the cooldown back to 10 seconds. Or reduce the cooldown even further. Like, I don't care. Buff Rod of Atos. Why the fuck are you nerfing Rod of Atos? What the hell? It wasn't a good item in the first place. No one bought it. It was so rare you saw this item. Ever. That just feels really bad. Like, it feels bad in my soul as a Rod of Atos lover to see this item just nerfed when it wasn't even that strong. Okay, moving on. Sange, Maim chance increased. Maim slow reduced from 20. And okay, so slightly worse on maybe like Slasher's Way SF, although that was a long time ago. Of course, he hasn't done that for a long time. Son changes carry over to Heaven's Halberd. Meme chance increased to 30%. You're gonna get this really reliably now. That's really nice. I love higher percentages things in Dota. Like, you would not believe how much I hated the Radiance change to give a low miss chance. Like, low chances in Dota, I think, are the stupidest things ever. Because, like, Sniper getting headshot on 40% chance, I'm fine with that. 40% chance, it's really reliable. You'll get those all the time. But to miss on a Radiance attack, when you only get like 2 auto attacks, it feels so shitty. And it just feels like it doesn't have to be there. And like, yeah, it's a buff to the item, but it's such a shitty way to buff an item, in all honesty. And I just hate it from a design perspective. Maim slow reduced from 32 to 26, 13 for melee ranged wielders. So they're weakening the maim, but increasing its reliability. I mean, Sanj is a bought item on heroes, don't get me wrong. People buy this item for sure. Just, okay. It's just really, really bad for ranged heroes now in terms of the maim. The stats are still really good, it's just you're not getting as much out of the passive of the item. But like, who would buy this? Like, let's say a Gyro or something. Maybe, I mean, I've seen an SF by Sanj Yasha. I've seen, yeah, those are the main range heroes that I think of. Definitely SF, Gyro. I can't think of many other ranged heroes who buy this, but like, for heroes like that, it's definitely quite a nerf. Shadow Amulet reduced. Okay. Shadow Blade is cheaper. Silver Edge is a little cheaper. Now requires Shadow Blade and Ultimate Orb instead of Shadow Blade, Sanj, and a recipe. Can be disassembled, though. Reduces further increase on the reduction of damage that it applies. This is definitely a unappreciated aspect of the item, and I'm glad to see it buffed, because it really is quite significant that you can reduce a hero's damage output completely by 50% for like 4 seconds. That's huge. Okay, 16 strength, 32 damage, 30 attack speed. Damn, that is a huge buff to Silver Edge. It increases its viability on all heroes instead of just strength heroes getting extra damage. Now every hero gets equally good stats. Man, this is so much better on like Slark now. That's absurd. Like every Agi hero who wanted to build into a Silver Edge, and every intelligence hero who wanted to build into a Silver Edge, got such a huge buff by this change. I'm kind of surprised, honestly, because Silver Edge was like not a bad item at all. Like you saw it bought several times in competitive Dota for sure, and now it just gets like a straight up buff. That's like a really good buff, and it can be disassembled too. Like, I don't know, man. That's a pretty hefty weight to throw onto the Silver Edge. But anyway, you will probably see this item more often, so it is worth it to note. They did remove the maim, though, from this item. I did not mention that. They removed the maim, and that is somewhat of a nerf. It wasn't a huge maim, it was just a lesser maim, because there's a Sanj and a Sanj and Yasha. So they reduced the movement speed and attack speed slow, but in exchange they added a ton of mana and a ton of agility. Like, it provides 2 extra armor now, and 12 to 120, it provides 180 mana now. Like, really quite an overall huge buff for Silver Edge. Smoke of Deceit. Stock replenish time reduced from 12 to 11 minutes. No longer has a cooldown attached to your hero when used. Oh, okay. So... So what I'm assuming this means is that it still has a cooldown. It's just when you pass it off, it doesn't keep the cooldown. So if you pass it on to a hero, he can use it where you couldn't. Because I don't think this just straight up means it no longer has a cooldown on your hero. Because before, when you would use it, and then you had like 2, and you would pass it over to somebody, then the cooldown, I believe, would carry over. But now that's fixed. Soul Booster no longer revives HP regeneration. That's surprising. Mana regeneration reduced from 100% to 50%. So Bloodstone still has some HP regen because of Perseverance, but Octarine Core no longer has much HP regen, I believe. It no longer provides HP regen. Huh. Okay. So they're reducing the overall availability of HP regen, and then they added it to drums. That's interesting to see how item builds might shift in the way of drums now, because HP regen in general has been phased out of certain items. Cost reduced a little bit, nothing really to note. Cost. Wow, TPs are so cheap. Remember when these used to be 135? I feel old. I remember the golden ages of 135, maybe even 150 gold TP. Now it's 50. Everyone's just TPing all over the place. Huh. Alright, now I can buy that windlace on my support now, because I have all this gold saved up from flying couriers and town portal scrolls and less gold on a ward. That's really what's happening though. Like, for supports anyway. It's like all these gold reductions just make it so you can buy a windlace. It's like, great. It's just one of those other things that I have to buy every game now. Alright, Vanguard. HP regeneration increased from 6 to 8. Gotcha. That requires a Helm of Iron Will, 2 times Null Talisman, and a 400 recipe. Veil debuff is now dispellable. Cost slightly reduced. Let's see. Oh, did they nerf Veil? 6 strength, 6 agility, 18, 666, 66, 12, 666. They reduced the cost by 30 and removed 6 intelligence and made Veil dispellable. I really did not see a Veil of Discord nerf coming. I don't think many other people did either. That's really, really surprising. Armor aura reduced from 5 to 4. Alright, just in line with the ring nerfs. Alright, I think I should probably go up, even though you already saw it. So I think I'm going to split it into 2, because this went way longer than it should have. Like, yeah, this went really, really long. So I am sorry about that. Maybe watch it at like 1.5 speed or something for the next part. I'm just going to jump right into the next part now, actually, and end this thing because it's already way too long. So, GG, guys.